All right, in the interest of everyone's time, we'll go ahead and get started and do some intros, and then I will hand things over. Good afternoon. My name is Krista D. Herrera. I am with the Colorado Festivals and Events Association Board of Directors. I also work for Colorado Mountain News Media up here in the mountain region of Colorado. We are here talking with Danita Dempsey, a longtime friend of mine for many, many years. We actually just had a laugh about how many years we've known each other and all the things that Danita has actually done over the years in her career. She has been in the events industry since 1989. She couldn't believe that she'd been doing this for that long, but since 1989, she has been then in the motorcycle industry and the racing industry for 18 years, and then has also been with doing municipal events for over 15 years. So she has got many, many years of great experience, and she is a trusted and respected professional in our industry. And I hope you enjoy what she's got to present to us today. She's done some amazing things with the town of Avon. So I'm gonna turn it on over to you, Danita. Couple of housekeeping things. One, if everybody can put their video on speaker view and minimize it. And then if you can all make sure that your microphones are turned off. She's going to do the core of her presentation, and then towards the end, we're going to have some topics where we can open it up for everybody. And Danita wanted to see everybody's shining faces and hear your beautiful voices. So at that time, then we can share all of you in the presentation as well. But at this point, if you wouldn't mind, put yourself on speaker view and mute your microphones, and I'll hand it on over to Danita.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Krista, for that heartwarming introduction. I appreciate that very much. And welcome. Welcome, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed today's presentation on what we have learned here in the town of Avon. If you're not familiar, the town of Avon is a few miles west of the Vail Village area and kind of at the base of Beaver Creek. So situated in our Colorado Rocky Mountains, which is a fantastic place to be for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. I appreciate that. So what we have here, town of Avon, again, I gave you a little bit of where we are geographically along the I-70 corridor. This picture that you see here is our July 3rd Salute to the USA event. This was our 2019 event. It's our signature event. In 2019, we had between 25 and 27,000 people in our park. We had Ziggy Marley on the stage, and it was just amazing and fantastic. And everybody had a fantastic time. We had no incidences, and let's hope we can all get there again here very, very soon. I wanted to take just a minute and kind of pause and talk a little bit about live events and entertainment and what it means to me and what I believe it also means for our Avon community. And that is creating an environment for healthy connection by providing space where placemaking, vibrancy, and creativity, shared and individual experiences, history and traditions, values and expressions are fostered. I hope that resonates with you ladies as well, you ladies and gentlemen as well. So before I go into insights, key takeaways, discoveries, I thought maybe it would be good to back up a little bit and share with you what we did in 2020 to make live events happen in the town of Avon. So we created in late May, early June, we created a standard event operations procedures document. That document was shared out to our local county health department, those that are in the decision-making seats, and went back and forth and then submitted our document. Once, I'm going to say in air quotes, once it was approved by the county, we rolled out that document to internally as well as externally to help us be able to execute our events. So that document is actually in the share or in the chat. Krista has loaded that up so that you guys can see that and pull that down. I'm going to briefly go through it, tell you a little bit about what it included. So it included an introduction to the venue itself. the size of the venue, where it was situated, how it was situated with reference to the viewing area and the stage area. It included a list of events. We did not only our produced events, but some of our third-party produced events. And it provided a description of how we were going to manage that venue. And most importantly, how, if we needed to, quickly we could stop a performance should it appear attendance exceeded our ability to provide effective guidance. It included codes of conduct. And the codes of conduct was, first of all, we had the 5 commitments of containment, which we've seen over and over and over again. But the codes of conduct was really about our expected behavior of guests who wanted to attend our events. Our guests, our staff, our artists, as well as our vendors. One document that was really helpful for us in determining what we needed to put in that codes of conduct was the Event Safety Alliance reopening guideline. And we've also placed that in the chat for you, so you can pull that down if you're not familiar with it. It came out in maybe May or June, maybe even a little bit earlier, but Krista has dropped that in the chat, so you can pull that down as well. That was really helpful too. I will say that Event Safety Alliance guideline in helping us have some comfort with reference to liability for us up here. And I would assume for some of you guys as well, there was this big conversation about if you invite the public into your venue and there's an outbreak, who has that liability? So having your codes of conduct as well as changing your contractual language helped us have some bit of comfort in that. It also included distancing and spacing protocols. So it provided all of the park measurements, the seating section capacities and seating section measurements, ingress and egress management, and seating attendance. And I want to say a little bit, not attendance, people, seating people, greeters, if you will. That part later turned out to be crucial in who we placed in those roles and having seating attendants. And it morphed from the first event to the last event. It morphed in the type of personality and the type of language that they were armed with in order to have those coming to our events feel comfortable. So that was a really critical part. Communication protocols, again, codes of conduct. We made sure that our codes of conduct were clearly stated. We stated them with high frequency through multiple platforms and through creative on-site signage. And that's kind of what you see here in our venue. We created this 12-foot out of corrugated plastic, a 12-foot supboard, because our lake is known for stand-up paddleboard. There's a lot of activity around our stand-up paddleboard. So we want to make it fun and creative and get away from some of that scary pandemic language that you were seeing everywhere and made it fun. And again, also creative. We did a caricature of our mayor to represent the 6 feet between individuals. We had creative signage with our seating sections and expectations. And you see there by the bicycle, we have one of our 5 commitments of containment signage, but we had that throughout our venue as well. We have our portable restrooms, and that's not a very exciting topic, but we had it in our protocols to discuss the spacing that we needed between each of the portable restroom locations. We put 2 at each location at each end of each of our seating areas, I should say, and we accompanied it with hand washing stations. And we also brought in a third-party agency to do the cleaning for us. And they also provided documentation of that. So that was really important for us. Sanitation, I already just talked about sanitation, so I didn't click the button. Security, not a whole lot to add to security. We didn't change a lot of things. What did change is the conversation around evacuation protocols, that should you be in a situation, an emergent situation, be it weather related or there's a bomb in the venue or God forbid mass shooting, any of those sorts of emergency mass evacuation situations, which emergency would take the priority, right? And in all of those cases, the social distancing piece was not a priority. So we talked through those pieces with the health department, as well as with our outside agencies, police department, fire department, medical staff. So that was important. This document also includes a seating diagram, and that seating diagram depicted 50 people with 6 feet between each person, not in the same household. And we arranged that diagram by typical social subgroups. Again, the subgroups 12 feet apart. We used our subboard to do that. That was actually quite a bit of fun. I'll talk more about that later. And it included a diagram and a venue layout. Now, we did not go in, a lot of venues did, and it worked really well. Our park is so big, we decided not to take that approach, but we didn't draw circles or squares on our venue, but we did plan out and mark out our venue each week, depending on which event was in there. And that proved to be really helpful. That seating, that diagram and venue layout also shows the placements of all the portalettes, the placements of our staff, where the seating sections were going to be, how they were labeled, signage, walkways, etc. So again, that document is in the chat. If you want to pull it down and take a look at it, you certainly can. And I'll pause here for a moment to see if there's any questions or any quick comments before we roll on to the next slide. No, nothing you see in the chat, Krista? We'll keep rolling.
Nothing at the moment. Keep going.
Awesome. All right, so I also want to touch briefly about our post-event brief. Now, the visual that you see here, the park is so huge and it looks so huge, right? This was our first Avon Live on June 24th. And I will open up my screen to a different window and pull this document up. It's also in the chat for you, should you decide to pull it down and take a look at it and make it work for you. But you can see here in our seating sections that we had to have 50-foot walkways at the very first Avon Live. And you can see how wide that is. It's a crazy amount of space. So each of our seating sections, we could get no more than 175. This is when we could have multiple groups seating. But having that visual was really, really key for us. So our post-event debriefs included an event overview, some event details, staff observations, and recommendations. And I'm going to attempt to shrink my screen and share with you a different document. So, Krista, can you guide me? Did you get a different document on your screen?
Nope, not yet. I have that post-event brief in the chat though.
Thank you. I'm going to go pull that up real quick and let's try a different screen share. There we go. Now can you see that? Yeah, thumbs up, give me a nod.
You're good.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So every single week we did sometimes just one brief and sometimes 2 or 3. So again, brief overview of our event, what the name was, the time, the temperature, the humidity in the air, the number of people in attendance, etc. So on our very first event on June 24th, which we were really nervous about because we were the first, definitely the first in Eagle County to host a live event, but I think the first in the state, but don't quote me on that, but I had heard that a couple of times. So watching our capacity, I've highlighted a few things here for you. Our max capacity on that first was 375. And in a typical year, our Avon Live Summer Concert Series, many of us have live free concerts for our communities. We're, depending on weather and the band, we're between 800 and 1500 typically in the summertime. So to drop it down to 375 seemed to work okay. It has event details. And again, this just relates to cash funding, in-kind, town produced, whether or not there was alcohol. We decided this year our town council passed an open container law. So everything was BYOB at all our events, and we did not have any food or beverage concessions at any events this past calendar year. And then we got into our staff observations and recommendations. And that was, again, highlighting a few things. We noted what functioned really well. And on this particular evening, we noted that people responded really well to our codes of conduct and adhered to our public health order distancing requirements. So we were excited about that. We noted areas for improvements, and this is where you will see I talked about our seating attendants and our greeters. We made a shift going into the next event about the type of language that they used and how approachable they were, and that worked well. You can see here we made a note about the walkways because it seemed excessive. Where we were in the public health order. So as we moved through the season, we knew exactly where we were and what our requirements were with the public health order. We included operations and logistics. I just highlighted here that the caricature of the mayor and the stand-up paddleboard were really well received by our community. We noted production and talent, security, medical, emergency response, sanitation resource recovery, marketing and promotions. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in that, again, codes of conduct. It was such a slippery slope, right? As how many people you got into your venue. So you had to be really careful to not advertise to, in air quotes, the non-local audience. So we didn't do any advertising outside of our own internal channels, but we did promote our codes of conduct and the expected behaviors of attending an event in Avon. Parking and transportation, not a lot to say there. Staffing, it took quite a bit of staff to execute with such high protocols related to the public health order and specifically related to the seating attendance as well. We struggled as we got through the season finding the number of people, but our audience got more and more comfortable as well. And super important is the visual record of what's going on. So we dropped in photos from each and every event and just kind of noted who was on our stage as well. So again, this document is in the chat if you care to download it. I think there's a couple in there just so you can kind of see how it changed for us each time. And I'm going to go back, I'm going to stop this share and go grab the other one again. And hopefully we're right back on target. There we go. You guys see the PowerPoint again? Awesome. Do you have any questions on that so far or anything that you guys want to raise? No? Quiet group today. Tough crowd. I did get a smile though, I can see that. Okay, then we'll go ahead and roll right along here. Insights, I want to do a shout out to, as I was working on this presentation, I wanted to make sure that it just didn't represent Avon, but in some capacity, it represented some of my peer communities that are peer mountain communities, I should say. So Beaver Creek, Vail, Breckenridge, other communities in Summit County, Dillon, Frisco, Keystone, et cetera. So I kind of collected a group of pieces of what they saw in their communities as well. And a lot of what I'm going to bring up today resonated with all of them or rose to the top across all of our mountain community. So I'm really curious as we go through this to learn from you and hear about where you guys are in the state of Colorado. So we shifted our focus in 2019 to be more community-based and focused events, and it became less about the large multi-day music festival and return on investment. This focus helped us in particular be nimble this year with our artists, our vendors, and our production. So the importance of community-based programming has really come to the surface, and that resonated across all of the mountain communities that I work with here. Maybe that resonates with you guys as well. Also, one of the insights that we have is we here in Avon have always stressed the importance of thorough, accurate, timely operating procedures and management plans. Although the pandemic did expose areas where maybe we became a bit lackadaisical, right? And it put a microscope on some of those less sexy areas and those less sexy protocols that we all have to do. And it has also allowed some time for some new learnings about our communications, our follow through, our sanitizing protocols and practices. You know, thinking about back of house. I'm so focused on front of house and what goes on in the guest world, but that back of house stuff is really important as well. As we move through this, our community really appreciated our efforts and really supportive of our codes of conduct and expectations of audience behaviors. They were so incredibly thankful as we moved through the season to see visible cleaning staff, to have seating attendants there and helping them. We believe the same level of care, if you will, will again be necessary through third quarter 2021, maybe the entire year, but we'll see how that adjusts. We have some information that we'll share with you at the end that maybe there's even a rosier picture than this one paints here. But we do expect to see that same level of care. The restrictions, and I know this resonates with all of you here, those restrictions were changing almost daily, right? This really required our events team to be able to reference information and adjust accordingly and very, very quickly. That's one of the reasons why those post-event reports were super helpful for us. And it allowed us to share those reports with our town council, our culture, arts, special events committee, as well as the county health department when needed. And that was really significant. So timely event reporting was crucial to keeping record of changes during the pandemic. And that was insightful for us because I don't know, I can't speak for you, but for me, sometimes in the summertime, we get moving so fast, right? From one event to the next, especially if you have multiple events in your venue within 1 week, that you think, oh, I'm going to go back and do my post-event report. And then a couple of weeks go by and you're like, I'll remember, no problem, I'll remember. But yeah, you don't always remember. So being able to do those in a timely manner for us was really helpful. Although we continue to monitor and shift our programming accordingly, I should say, we continue to monitor consumer confidence, et cetera. We believe restrictions, again, are likely to lessen in the third quarter and that consumer confidence will increase as vaccinations increase. And I don't think I'm sharing anything super insightful when I say that, but we continue to do that and monitor and see. But right now, third quarter is looking like it could be a lot of fun, but we hope that June, July is a lot of fun as well. I'm starting to appear locally for us and in some of my peer communities that are close. I'm hearing that there's quietly canceling some events that are May, June, and July that are traditionally larger format, and that maybe more for a longer term, they're going to shift to a community-based event instead of those large, invite everybody to come into your community. That's what I'm starting to hear a little bit. So we'll see how that continues to flesh out as we go along. We're seeing this too, right? The desire to gather is human nature, and a well-produced live event has an amazingly impactful experience on our community. The level of trust our community has placed in us to produce a meaningful experience in a safe environment was really key for our success. And I'm anxious to hear what you all did in your communities as well. There was such a feeling of gratitude from our community. So many thank yous and smiles, yes, even under the masks. That was great to see, which I think, speaking in turn for us, created a humble, joyful, and fulfilled events team. I feel sometimes that in the event season, when it starts to get a little bit crazy and you're pulling on your public works department, your events team, maybe your police department and other departments that aren't traditionally involved in the events world, you know, there can be at times a level of frustration. There's so much to do and so little time to do it. And I think the pandemic, for me anyway, allowed time to say, this is what I get to do. This is amazing stuff for our community, and this is what I get to do. So that was insightful for me in particular. People are willing to pay a bit more for programming that they feel is safe. Now, in the town of Avon, we didn't do any fee-based programming. All of our programming was free. And this was shared by one of my peer communities that I reached out to that I've known, gosh, forever. And they did a survey of their community, which most of what they do are fee-based. And that's what they learned through that survey, is that they're willing to pay a little bit more if they feel safe. So they did a good job over there. And they also learned in that same survey that they have an incredibly loyal fan base. If they produce an event, they will come. And I will say that resonates with us here in the town of Avon as well, in that our community, they want to get out and they want to see live music on our stage, and they want to utilize our beach and lake, and they want to have gatherings. They want to have beer festivals and art festivals and all those things that we like to do. Our community is incredibly loyal about that. And then again, I can't seem to say this enough, that everyone has been so incredibly thankful for the experience and the hard work for event producers making events happen during this difficult time. And boy, I can't say enough about how important it is for all of us in this event industry to be resilient and adaptable. And I got pretty darn tired, I'll be honest, tired of hearing the world pivot, just pivot, go this way, red light, green light, etc. But behind that comes a lot of gratitude. So I'm going to pause here for a minute and see if anybody is raising their hand, if they want to share anything about the insights that they learned during their communities.
And feel free to turn on your cameras and join in, everyone.
Yeah, going once, going twice. All right, rolling. All right, discoveries. So we did a lot of art this year, which was one of our goals, to do more art this year. So this is just a photo of one of our artists out in what we call our Main Street Mall area creating live art. We launched a series this year called Sunset Live, and that's the back of our stage, that upper tile in the left. On Sunday evenings, we had live music, and it's so cool. People sit on their pedal boats and on their supboards and gather around the lake and listen to live music, which is a lot of fun. That's one of the bands that we had. I think that was like August 2nd date, and can't recall where the unicorn came from, but it's a ton of fun. So we all know that live event and entertainment industry is very important to our community's economic health, and the pandemic brought to light how essential they are to our community's social and mental health, that the power of music and events is real, it's tangible, and it's powerful. And that was something that I came out of this going, yeah, right on, absolutely we are, especially that mental health piece, right? So many webinars, emails, news coming through. It was information overload at times and difficult to keep up. For us here, I discovered that there is a rich and supportive network of event professionals who are eager to share their knowledge and support for one another and a support for one another. The ability to tap into this supportive network was so incredibly helpful as we all struggled to digest and interpret this information and determine the next steps. For us up here, I know it was a fine line. My boss has used this line on me before. He goes, it's a fine line between being rogue and being a leader. And we liked to look at, for Avon, that we led because we were the first in the county. Again, we think in the state, but like I said, don't quote me on that, to say, okay, we'll go first. We'll actually go first and host an event. And it went really well. But my background being an event since 1989, I found, my experiences, I should say, that sometimes event producers or peer communities keep information about their events pretty close to the chest, right? They play their cards close. And I found that through this experience, people were more open and honest about what to do and honest to share that, yeah, they're struggling, right? So there were connections that would have never been made without this breakdown of process. And of course, the breakdown is really the pandemic. And it's, with that particular statement, less about connection, because the connections were there, but the collaboration wasn't necessarily there. So that to me was like, it was so heartwarming that everybody rallied and got together and shared information and supported one another. That was really a pleasant discovery for me. All right, discoveries. I've mentioned this once before. We took a lighthearted, artistic approach with our event signage. We felt here locally anyway, and this was in June, right? But we were already exhausted by all of the warning signs and the scary pandemic language. So this approach, to have a lighthearted, artistic approach to our signage and our messaging, was really well received by our community. That supboard picture that I showed you a little bit earlier in the presentation, we had more people ask us to stop and take a picture, or if they could borrow our subboard and take a selfie. So we saw that over social media, and that was a really cool thing. Another discovery, surprise and delight, right? The surprise and delight opportunities reinforced our commitment to our community and brought our community together. And these are the sorts of things that we didn't necessarily, there was less of a focus on it, right? We were focused about our larger events and how many people and how much marketing and those sorts of things. We did some small things like a virtual scavenger hunt. We did one of those in early September. That was a lot of fun, that engaged the community, going out to what we call our gems, like Nottingham Lake is a gem, or our historical sites. And I'll show you a picture a little bit later. And we had people get together in teams and post pictures on social media, and they won prizes to gift certificates to our restaurants. So that was a lot of fun. We did a prayer flag project that is still, actually just came down not that long ago, that our community mailed in prayer flags, and we strung them in our Main Street Mall. We did a little Faces on Trees project is what I call it. And it was actually, we hired a local artist. They carved out some faces and put them on trees. And it was one of those things that you could be walking through our Main Street Mall and be like, oh, look at that. That's really, really cool. So kind of whimsical, but again, surprise and delight. And that was a discovery for us, that our community really liked that. And it was important to show that support. The supporting and hiring of local talent was successful and well received. And that's not traditionally what we do here in Avon for our free community concert series or some of our larger shows. So we dipped our toe in that booking of talent, which was a lot of fun. I've dipped my toe in that before, but never to this extent, if you will. But when you think about the local bands, we have such a richness of musicians here, as well as artists, but musicians in particular. Our ability to show them support and hire them when there weren't many gigs around, right, to be had, was really successful and supportive. And a lot of our neighboring communities did the same thing. So the talent here locally was really grateful and full of gratitude for that. The VIP of all event experiences, and I will say this is something that came from one of my peer communities. We in Avon didn't have any events that were VIP, had VIP areas or anything along those lines, but this was a comment that was submitted to me that he said, with reduced numbers, more space for each guest, increased communications about expectations, procedures, et cetera, the experience for those attending events has felt very VIP. And it'll be really interesting to see, or an interesting challenge, I should say, as we ramp up capacities to keep that experience elevated while increasing attendance. So we'll see how that plays out. Does anybody want to share anything from their communities or their experience before we roll on?
I can't remember if Zoom has a raise your hand, so I raised it in real life. My name's Laura Waniak. I am a huge fan of Danita. She is right down the hill from us. I work for Beaver Creek Resort Company. And I think that, all these things that she said, definitely we see up here as well. I think the other thing, being in kind of a resort area in the village, is we're dealing with a lot of different constituents. So as you probably know, last summer we had a lot of real estate that changed hands. So not only were we dealing with our guests, we're dealing with a lot of homeowners, new homeowners, and actually anticipating for those people to come back this summer as well. So understanding your audience as both community, local, and new people community, but also, I guess, just opening it up and understanding the demographic.
Yeah.
That was kind of a long answer.
No, really, yeah, really good thought. And that's a really good point. Well made, Laura, that an interesting thing around Avon, we call ourselves Heart of the Valley, right? Those stakeholders, our flank communities of Beaver Creek and of Vail, are very guest driven, right? They have merchant associations and those sorts of bodies and committees driving a lot of what they do and what they offer to the guests who come in. And that was different for Avon because we don't have that pressure. It was, like I said, it was much more about community, but that's a really good point. Well made, Laura. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have anything that they want to share? You can wave your hand like Laura did. Nobody? Nobody? Going once? All right, we'll keep on rolling. Thank you, Laura. All right, key takeaways, you know, and as I was working on this and putting this together, there was so much to say. So trimming it down proved to be a month-long exercise, I will say. So this is what, in polling some of, like I said, my peer communities and for ourselves, this is what rose to the top for the most part. We made staffing decisions during this time as critical skill sets and communications were magnified, right? The logistics, operations, production, ticketing changes and challenges that we've all been presented with over this past year require people who are knowledgeable and have the ability to quickly adapt and find solutions. Without talented staff in place, these challenges become much, much greater. So the importance of seasoned, highly experienced, knowledgeable event staff really rose to the top. Allowing open container on town-owned properties is likely to be longer term. And again, that's very Avon specific, but I do know other mountain communities did these same things. You might have red solo cup districts, right? In order to support restaurants and to support the mental health of our constituents, being able to pack a picnic, bottle of wine, come to the park and enjoy music, or gather your group and go out to the park and have a six-pack, right? That became really, really important to the mental health and the social health of our community. So our town council in May, maybe early June, said all town property was open container. It's gone back right now for wintertime, but I fully expect that to come back. There might be a few exceptions, right? Like a beer festival, or if there is a ticketed model sort of event in our park, then we'll have to address that as it comes up. But
Danita, I might toss in one little comment about the alcohol too. One thing that I've run into is when you're dealing with alcohol, even before the pandemic, there's a lot of logistical considerations when you're dealing with alcohol. And so when you have a pandemic and all the other things stacked right on top of that, that's another key takeaway that I would toss out, is that it's just another logistical layer to the onion that you don't necessarily need. So any communities that do incorporate that open container, it helps the event and the event coordinators as far as dealing with all of those layers of that.
Yeah.
Tasty onion.
Yeah, totally agree on that, Krista. And again, really good point that we decided as part of our protocols, and I didn't point that out in our event operating procedures, is that we completely did away with any food and beverage at all, so that we didn't have line queues to worry about. We didn't have high touch points to worry about. We didn't have to worry about whether or not the food vendor was really compliant. So yeah, really good point. And it does adds a whole nother layer. All right, there will continue to be, I believe anyway, and again with my peer communities, a need for frequent and fluid communication, shortened planning timelines, right? Adjusted contracts, practices, operational procedures, and protocols. We've relied heavily on our past experience and know how to come up with creative, unique ways to push forward in a positive manner. Although, been there, done that, right? We've already done that. We no longer have the unknown. We've lived through it for the past year. And for me, there's some comfort in that. And that's a key takeaway. There's not as much angst, if you will, going into this season as there was at this point in time last year, because I kind of feel like check that box, right? Still being very mindful and very cautiously optimistic, I should say, but a little bit of comfort there. Another takeaway is that video calls can work, right? Video calls can work really well, even though we're, right, Zoom fatigue, anybody? Anyway, they can work. It still does not replace that in-person communication. That in-person communication is so much more effective. It helps build camaraderie. Oh, it looks like I'm a bullet behind. I'm gonna click one more. Boom, there it is. So it's crucial for the event team to be in communication daily with one another, and also to hold each other accountable for various roles and responsibilities. And then in closing, I want to offer, and then we can open it up for a little bit of networking and chatting and asking questions. James Digby, he's the president of the Event Safety Alliance. And we've also dropped in the chat the event operations guideline and also a live event manifesto. I'll be honest with you, I haven't read the complete manifesto, but I did a week-long conference with the Event Safety Alliance back in early December. And one of the things that he says in that manifesto is, for those organizations that demonstrate the necessary characteristics of adaptability, strategic thinking, and inspirational leadership, the future is one of opportunity. So that for me really resonates, and that's a key takeaway. And that inspirational leadership part is key. Leading and not growing rogue, again, a fine line. And in that, I will close this out and open it up for conversation, open it up for questions. You want me to go ahead and stop screen share, or do you want me to keep anything open, Krista?
I would probably stop screen share unless everybody wants to take down Danita's contact information. I'll drop it in the chat, but I'd like to get some faces up and see who's on the call. And as a point of housekeeping, following this presentation too, we are open to continued networking on behalf of CFEA. So we encourage everybody to ask questions of Danita, ask questions of myself. I know Ira and Andrea are also on this call, and a few of our other board members from CFEA. If you have questions of us, but we kind of just wanted to have, you know, for whatever it's worth, a virtual mixer chat a little bit about what we're doing and some key takeaways that you all have had, or some things that you've experienced so this summer. I'd kind of like to know, you know, what you have done in 2020. If there's some other event communities or event coordinators on the call that have done some different things, some unique ideas that we can all sort of share moving into 2021 as things open up. I will start by saying that there is some interesting information that's going to be coming out in the news this evening. So make sure that you tune in to Channel 7, Channel 9, and Channel 2. And then hopefully in all of our newspapers up here in the mountains as well. I'm also on an exit strategy task force with the Colorado Event Alliance. And they had a meeting today with the governor's office, and they are loosening gathering sizes, or at least they're coming up with some milestones as to what those gathering sizes might change. So the dial as it sits right now for us event coordinators is reshaping again. So just keep tuned for all of that. If you would like, I will get a press release here shortly and I can share that with everybody. So opening it up, have fun.
I'm raising my hand again. I actually have to go work in activation. I have to leave in like 2 minutes. This is Laura from Beaver Creek. But I wanted to just mention something that went along with the whole alcohol situation. So Telluride has done this. Beaver Creek did it, started it last summer, and I think Vail is doing it, what's called a common consumption area. And what that is, there's a lot of very specific rules and regulations for it, but essentially the restaurants they agree to it. There's an actual promotional association. They sell the alcohol out of their restaurants, and they're in special cups with our logo, with the restaurant logo, and people can walk around the village. There is a liquor boundary, but we have found that that has been really successful. I mean, we're a little bit of a different animal up here because we have a pretty finite space that we can put a map out and say, stop, you know, we put signs everywhere. But we found that that's been pretty successful, and the restaurants love it. It also alleviates us staffing bars, and we have no staff. Everyone was, furloughed, and we don't have event staff anymore. So, so anyhow, I just wanted to mention that because that is, it's been super for both of us, and it'll be cool to see who else in Colorado decides to implement it.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Laura, today.
Yeah. Great job, Danita. #1 fan right here. And everyone, good luck what year is it? 2021 with all of your events. And take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Bye.
I want to kind of tag on what Krista had said a few minutes ago. I was going to close out with this and I kind of forgot. We're on the events, I should say, I'm on the events task force here in Eagle County, representing multiple indoor and outdoor spaces. And I was not told I couldn't share this. So I'm going to share this here. And it's some really exciting stuff as the state works on this update. It's looking as though there may be no contact tracing, no testing. Outdoor events could be reduced to 12 feet of distance let me read this here. Indoor events only 25 feet distancing from performer. If the performer, I'm not going to read all that. Counties get final decision. That's the big piece. Outdoor events, 12 feet of distancing from performers instead of 25. Potentially, again, county makes the final decision. I think there's other exciting stuff in here, but that was the big part. And I think we've all heard 70% of Coloradoans, 70 plus, will be vaccinated in the next 48 hours, it says. So that's really interesting. Anyway, all really good upbeat news. And it may not be third quarter before we can really open up in a larger capacity again. So anyway, just wanted to share that real quick. And I can hardly wait to see the press release. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, unmuted myself. Eliza is so cute. She put it in the chat. She says, let me know I'm driving when I can speak and chime in. I have a follow-up question, but I was going to actually call on her to sort of talk about the other side of the alcohol scene since she represents Diageo. But Eliza, jump in here.
You're muted again, Krista. Is it #6 or *6?
No, I was trying to unmute. Oh, there she is.
Oh.
Okay, got it. Hey, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Danita. Fabulous presentation. I don't think we've actually worked together, but I know your name very well within the industry and just some background. I work for an advertising agency and experiential marketing company that represents Diageo. So, Andrea, I appreciate you kind of calling me out because I'm going to play the devil's advocate position regarding spirits and consumption and patrons being able to experience new products. So my question for you is just, how do you foresee building back into your events different vendors and sponsors that want to participate but don't necessarily fall into that restaurant category, right? So the moment you guys have open consumption laws or have these special spaces, as Laura was kind of describing in Beaver Creek, what does that look like now for some of your biggest partners that used to come in and sponsor your events and, give you additional revenue on top of liquid to lip opportunities?
That is a great question. And I think as I'm going to say, that's a really murky crystal ball when it comes to that. Right now for Avon, it's been a number of years since we have, in air quotes, sold a large alcohol sponsor. So we're just going to have to cry. And I don't think in 2021, we're going to get there where we're going to have to play that role, if you will. We have our very own optional premise license for the town of Avon and for our main park. And the hope was that we were going to handle all of our own alcohol concessions in 2021, or I should say in 2020. And then the pandemic hit, so we didn't do it at all. So we're
Sure.
trying to move away from that a little bit, but maybe other communities can offer a little bit more insight on how they're gonna tackle that piece. For us, it's not that big of a deal. We don't have a huge chunk of our revenue stream for events tagged to sponsorship, at least for 2020.
You know,
Got it.
I was gonna chime in. I actually have some ideas because I've been working on a couple of potential events coming up for the future and how we would incorporate alcohol. And while there is that onion, I feel like there are ways to incorporate alcohol without it being a beer garden per se, or an alcohol garden, if that makes sense. So, you know, with farmers
Sure.
markets and different other venues where they've done tastings and they've done that sort of thing, there might be some opportunity to incorporate alcohol in that regard. I mean, we would still have to do the IDing and wristbanding and things like that. But as far as from the liquor licensing standpoint, you know, if you can pull in more of like a tasting license, I don't know if anybody else from a municipal side of things has a chime in, but that's something that I've been kind of looking into for some of my events, so that we can bring in alcohol, but not alcohol to a point where that's part of the celebration. You know, we're celebrating that brand and we're helping with that marketing effort, but we're not necessarily feeding people alcohol, if that makes sense.
Sure.
How does that
No,
feel?
absolutely. And go ahead.
You're muted.
Sorry, I do that all the time. I was going to ask the group, but go ahead, Elisa.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I was just going to say, you know, what we're looking at doing and activating, when I say we as in Diageo across the nation, it's very similar. So I just want to make sure that you aren't discounting that option, because I think that's going to be a missed opportunity for a lot of the event organizers, and could be good information to send out, that we don't necessarily have to do a liquid to lip at our activation, right? It's not required now due to COVID for us to be able to participate and be a part of your event. So we can still set up a really cool activation. We can do brand education. We can do a giveaway, whatever that might look like. And then there's a concessions option, right? So like you said, that space for individuals to go ahead and purchase or consume that product. So what we've been kind of talking through is, even, let's just say you stop by the Don Julio activation at the Avon Arts Festival and you learn about the product, we give you a giveaway, there's a cool activation, whatever it might be, you chop your own agave, but then we say, hey, on us, go get from the bar, which is concessions, which is now run by the town of Avon or whatever event specialists or, you know, event organizers running it. And then you're now creating patronage between that brand and the event. So something for you guys to think through, that there's options around that. So just to make sure that you're being creative with those opportunities, because I think they're definitely still there. And obviously here to brainstorm with you if that's something of interest.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for that.
You know, Danita, one other thought I had from a municipal standpoint too, one thing you brought up earlier was about the sense of community, and maybe another way that alcohol could get incorporated into an event without, you know, to lip, is maybe there is a call out to the different restaurants that are serving that particular brand. So like if you're going to talk about a particular, you know, let's just say Jose Cuervo or whatever she had mentioned earlier, then you can kind of talk through, you know, maybe signature cocktails at different restaurants within your community. They're not necessarily at the event, but then you're also serving your business community and your restaurant community through your event as well. And then you're helping to push that marketing brand out without it necessarily having to have some sort of a liquor license. I don't know, just an idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we've done that too, Andrea, so that's a great call out. So we essentially call that an on-premise push. So we just say, again, brand activation. Now, please go visit Susie Q's taco stand. They're serving buy one, get one, or, you know, it's $2 off this margarita. You can do the same thing with your off-premise account. So same concept. It doesn't have to necessarily be your larger liquor stores. It can be mom and pops, you know, liquor stop. They're doing $3 off a bottle if you went and saw this activation or talked to someone there, right? So you're driving incremental business to additional businesses within your community for that particular event.
Hey all, Phil Worcester here from Creative Strategies Group. Hey Danita, great to see you. Just one of the event that we had this past year was the Denver Chris Kindle Market, and that's working with the German American Chamber of Commerce here in Denver. It was 34 days, so it was a very long event. We had 2 zones that we were able to have under the city and county of Denver, of up to 75 people per zone. So we could have roughly 150 people there, plus or minus a few at a time. We had Prost, and then we had beer, and we had Glühwein there as well. The German American Chamber of Commerce did get the liquor permit through the city of Denver like they have done in past years. It just, usually they sell tons and tons and tons of kegs and bottles of Glühwein. And we sold a heck of a lot of beer and Glühwein this year, not as much. We just had to really, we didn't have a time limit for people to enjoy the product or whatever as much as they wanted to enjoy. But we had long lines. We were always at capacity. It ended up working out well. Obviously, we would have wanted the limits on people to be much larger, so we could have sold a lot more for the German American Chamber of Commerce, as well for the brands that we were selling. But all in all, it went well. We do have some other events that we're working with that here in Denver that will probably have traditional liquor permits like they have in the past. Exactly what that all shakes down to be TBD. Our main thing at CSG, as many of you know, is sponsorships and those sort of partnerships. We're working with all of our traditional partners, whether it be Yuliza at Cherry Creek Arts Festival, a lot of the different beer partners at Levitt Pavilion, so on and so forth. So we're still keeping those partnerships alive. They're just we're all gonna have to put our creative thinking caps on. So we're excited about that. So.
That's great. I was wondering, Phil, I was sitting here scratching my brain. I'm like, I know that name. I know that name. So yes, for CSG. Great to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks for those comments.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm going to shift a little bit of a gear on the conversation, because one other topic that came up in Danita's presentation that I'm kind of curious from this group is staffing and labor. Danita is a very blessed individual with some really, really fantastic staff, and I have worked with her staff in the past. But I'm curious to everybody else, other event coordinators, because of all this pandemic and all the things and all of that, you know, onion, as I mentioned earlier, labor is definitely a topic because we need it, and we've always needed it, but now almost to a much higher volume. So I wanted to see if there were any creative ideas out there as far as bringing in labor. I mean, are you using temp agencies, or are you bringing in volunteers, and what sort of methodologies? And, you know, just curious about staff.
I wasn't involved with it directly at the Chris Kindle Market, but they had a lot of the different vendors, whether from security, they had a lot more security on hand this year to kind of help with the gates. And they had the bar staff actually, they kind of expanded their responsibilities to not just serve drinks at the bar, but also to kind of make sure that people we were at capacity in our zones and we never went over capacity. So just expanded responsibilities of the people that were there is how they got it done.
I'll just throw out, I'm going to try it. I don't know how it will work. In the past, I have run from a municipal level, because I used to work for the town of Gypsum, running Gypsum Days. And what I did was I partnered with the school district, and for sporting clubs, I did a $10 per volunteer per hour stipend to their club, whether it be like Eagle Valley High School football or the cheerleaders or something like that. Not anything a high level, but just, you know, general labor for setup, for breakdown, things like that. And so I'm going to actually expand that. I'm going to try expanding that to nonprofits for an event I'm doing this May called the Western Colorado Outdoor Sportsman Expo, and see if I can try and drum up some labor through our nonprofit partners to see if that might be an opportunity for some additional staff and labor, and then also vicariously support their nonprofits by paying them small stipends. I don't know if anybody else has any, that's where I'm going to try. I don't know how well it'll work, but I didn't know if anybody else had some other cool strokes of brilliance.
Yeah, that's a really good, I don't have anything to add on that. And unfortunately, I'm up against the clock. I'm going to have to bounce here, but I want to give a quick shout out to, thank you so much, CFEA, Krista in particular, for this opportunity. It was great to see some new faces, some old faces, not old like mine, but old faces of people that I have known over the years in the industry. So a quick thank you. Email me anytime if you have any questions. And Krista, I know we'll be talking again soon. And same Krista, or Carrie, nice to see your face. Okay, bye.
And I encourage everyone, we are still willing to stick around if anybody wants to do some additional networking, or if everybody else needs to move on to other things. But CFEA wanted to just kind of host this beyond the presentation to just chit chat, share ideas. So I'll throw it to the floor. Carrie, do you have anything going on in the production world?
We are excited to say that we are getting more and more calls each day to start planning events. A couple of things in the spring, of course, Krista's event in May, we're very excited about, to be outdoors for an expo. Also some summer concerts. We're getting a lot of inquiries. We're starting the process. So if that's any indication that gives people hope, we are starting to see a pickup. So we're very excited.
Phil, are you planning on for your Chris Kindle next year? Are you, I mean, I know that seems like it's such a ways away, but are you looking at a full board event?
As of now, I think that's the hope. We'll see what shakes down. I know we're hoping we also work here in Denver with a lot of other events. So hopefully by the time we hit the Chris Kindle market, we'll have had a few others under our belt, and we're able to know what can happen and what can't happen. So I know Ira and Andrea I work with them on a couple events here in town as well. So it's kind of right now is sit, wait, and see what exactly our schedules are going to look like. But hopefully we'll start to get some clarity here on some events soon and make them happen. One that we don't just manage the sponsorship and marketing for, but we own and produce is the Denver Century Ride. It's a cycling event. Traditionally, that's in June. We've pushed that to the end of September already. So that's slightly different than the large public festivals and events that we work on, because they're out on the road. We're not exactly sure if we're going to be able to have our large finish line expo and like street party that we historically have. But we hope we can. That's the goal right now. We just got to wait and see what exactly all shakes down with the restrictions and stuff in the coming days and weeks and months. So we just bought ourselves more times by pushing it to September. So